The morning sun slipped through the thin curtains of a small Surulere apartment. Amara Nwosu, a 28-year-old accountant, sat at a rickety dining table, balancing invoices on her old HP laptop. She lived quietly, worked diligently, and spoke little about her past. But behind her calm eyes was a story the city of Lagos had long forgotten. A knock came on her door. It was a courier, well-dressed, polite, out of place in her modest neighborhood. He handed her a gold-embossed envelope. The logo read, Oasis Holdings, 50th Anniversary Gala. Her hands trembled. That name, Oasis Holdings, was carved deep in her family's pain. It was the empire her late father, Enger, Nnamdi Nwosu, helped build before dying in a suspicious accident. His business partner, Chief Obinna Okonkwo, had emerged sole owner weeks later. Amara was only 10 at the time. Her mother's grief drowned their home, and silence became their inheritance. Now, 20 years later, the Okonkwo family invited her, by name, to their golden jubilee. She almost tore the letter in half, but curiosity stopped her. Why, huh? How did they even remember her father's name? She read it again, slowly. The Okonkwo family cordially invites Miss Amara Nwosu to celebrate 5 decades of Oasis Holdings excellence. Her heart burned. Excellence built on betrayal. By nightfall, she made her decision. She would go, not to smile, not to mingle, but to see the faces of those who buried her father's legacy. The next week, she found herself in a borrowed gown, boarding a danfo from Surulere to Victoria Island, clutching her small purse like armor. She knew she would stand out among the diamonds and designer perfumes, but she didn't care. She needed answers. What she didn't know was that the gala would mark the first step in reclaiming everything stolen from her family's name. The hall at Eco Hotel and Suites glittered like a movie scene. Chandeliers, champagne fountains, camera flashes. Luxury screamed from every corner. The Okonkwo family arrived in convoy, Chief Obinna, regal and gray-haired. His wife, Lady Nkechi, dripping in coral beads, and their 2 daughters, Kaioma, an Ivy League-educated socialite, and Kelechi, a fashion influencer whose smile was as sharp as a blade. When Amara walked in, the crowd paused, not in admiration, but confusion. Her simple blue gown, her natural hair, and quiet composure didn't fit the elite's unspoken code. Kaioma turned to her sister and whispered, "Who let the help in?" Their laughter sliced through the music. A server tried to escort Amara away, assuming she was staff. Before she could speak, Tobichukwu, a calm man in a black tuxedo, intervened. "She's my guest," he said firmly. Tobichukwu Okonkwo, the family's adopted son and financial director, had noticed her name on the guest list and felt something unusual about her. Her surname, her eyes, her silence. As dinner was served, Amara sat quietly at the end of the long glass table, surrounded by mocking eyes. The MC praised Chief Obinna for 50 years of vision and integrity. The crowd applauded. Amara felt her stomach twist. Her father's photo should have been on that banner too. When Chief Obinna's gaze met his, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Then he raised his champagne. "To our family legacy," he said. Amara whispered under her breath, "My father's legacy." That night, she left early, but not before seeing a wall of framed photos near the exit. One showed her father, young and proud, standing beside Obinna with the inscription, "Founding Partners, 1990." The name Nnamdi Nwosu had been scratched off. Her chest tightened. This was no accident. It was a raise. 2 weeks later, Amara visited her late father's old workshop in Surulere, now abandoned and filled with dust. In a locked drawer beneath rusted tools, she found a weathered brown envelope marked for Amara, "When she's ready." Her breath caught as she opened it. Inside were original partnership contracts, handwritten letters, and a certificate of incorporation showing her father's 51% ownership of Oasis Holdings. The documents had Obinna's signature beside Nnamdi's. But there was more, a letter from Barrister Ease, her father's lawyer, warning of a possible setup days before the accident. Amara sat on the cold floor, clutching the papers, tears spilling. "You knew, Papa, you knew they would take everything." She scanned the documents again. They were legally binding. Her father's will, though unsigned, named her sole heir. But one clause stood out. If my partner ever betrays his trust, truth will find its voice through my blood. Amara realized what she had to do. She would infiltrate Oasis Holdings from within. To reclaim her father's empire, she needed access and information. Dressed in a neat black suit she bought from Yaba Market, Amara walked into Oasis Holdings' glass headquarters in Ikoyi. The receptionist eyed her suspiciously, but handed her a visitor badge. She was there for an accounting role. Inside the interview room sat Kaoma, now head of human resources, tapping on her iPhone. When Amara introduced herself, Kaoma raised a brow. "Surulere, right? I thought we stopped recruiting locals this year." The other panelists laughed nervously. Amara forced a smile. "I'm here because of my qualifications, not my address." Kaoma smirked. "We'll see about that." During the test, Amara's analytical precision impressed everyone. But Kaoma couldn't stand it. "You're too ambitious for your background," she said coldly. "This company values pedigree." "Then maybe you should value results more," Amara replied. Standing, the room fell silent. She didn't get a position she applied for. Instead, Kaoma spitefully assigned her to a junior accounts assistant role, a humiliation meant to crush her spirit. But Amara smiled inwardly. The closer she got to the books, the closer she'd get to the truth. Weeks turned into months. Amara worked quietly, efficiently, and with unshakable grace. Her colleagues began to admire her, whispering about her accuracy and calm under pressure. One morning, during an internal audit, Amara discovered a massive discrepancy, 250 million Nigerian nairas missing from a project account. She stayed late that night, cross-checking every figure. At 10 p.m., Tobichukwu walked in. "You're still here?" he asked, surprised. "Numbers don't sleep," she replied softly. He smiled, impressed. They reviewed the files together, and his respect deepened. For the first time, someone inside Oasis saw her not as a nobody, but as a woman of brilliance and integrity. By morning, her report had saved the company from a looming scandal. Chief Obinna publicly commended Tobichukwu for his keen oversight. Tobichukwu, however, corrected him. It was Amara. The boardroom murmured. Kayoma's face darkened. "That local girl." "Yes," Tobichukwu said firmly, "and she's the best accountant we have." From that day, whispers began to spread. Who really is Amara Nwosu? She had earned their attention. But what none of them knew was that the quiet girl from Surulere was about to shake the very foundation of their empire. The Lagos rain felt like it had something to say. Amara sat in an old Corolla, gripping a manila file. Her heart raced as she parked outside the worn office of Barrister Ease, her late father's trusted lawyer, now a gray-haired man with eyes that had seen too much. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and dust. He stared at her for a long moment. "You look just like your father," he said softly. "You found the documents, didn't you?" Amara nodded. He trusted the wrong man, Barrister. Ease sighed heavily. "Chief Obinna didn't just betray him. He destroyed every record that proved your father's stake. But I kept one copy, hidden in a case file they never found." He pulled out an old folder stamped Oasis Holdings, 1990 Incorporation. Inside were duplicates of the original documents, the same ones Amara had, with additional notations in her father's handwriting. "He thinks I'm blind to his lies." Amara clenched her fists. "He killed my father, didn't he?" Ease looked away. "I can't prove it, but your father died the day before he was to demand an audit. The brakes of his car failed on 3rd Mainland Bridge." Silence filled the room. The sound of rain tapping the windows became deafening. Ease leaned forward. "Amara, these people don't lose. They destroy. You can't just walk into court. You need to strike when they least expect it, and when the evidence can bury them." Amara nodded slowly. "Then I'll wait. But I won't hide." As she left the office, lightning flashed across the sky, a warning and a promise. She whispered to herself, "Papa, they took your voice, but I'll make sure they hear your name again." Back at Oasis Holdings, tension brewed like storm clouds. Amara worked quietly, but her eyes missed nothing. She noticed irregular transfers, funds wired to offshore accounts in Mauritius and Dubai under shell companies linked to Kaoma and Kelechi. One evening, while reviewing old ledgers, she discovered something shocking. The Okonkwo's had been using her father's signature, forged digitally, to authenticate ownership documents for years. Every profit Oasis made was under the shadow of that fraud. She spent nights printing, scanning, and storing copies in a hidden flash drive she wore as a necklace. She also began building a secret file titled Reclamation. Meanwhile, Tobechukwu grew closer. He often found excuses to visit her office, just to check a report. But his questions grew deeper. "Why are you so invested in this company?" he asked one night. Amara smiled faintly. "Because Oasis owes someone a debt." He studied her face. "Who?" "My father," she said quietly. Before he could ask more, she added, "Some debts can't be written off, not even in 10 ledgers." Kayoma had been watching Amara closely. Her instinct screamed that something was off. When she discovered Tobechukwu had been spending time with Amara, jealousy ignited her cruelty. One Monday morning, as the staff gathered for a surprise compliance check, Amara's laptop was seized. Within minutes, IT claimed to have found confidential data copied from the company's main server. Kayoma's voice echoed through the glass hallways. "She's been stealing company secrets." The humiliation was public. Colleagues who once admired her now looked away. Tobechukwu tried to speak. "Kayoma, this is a mistake." But Chief Obinna cut him off. "Silence. This is not the kind of scandal Oasis can afford. Fire her immediately." Amara stood frozen, heart pounding, watching years of composure crumble in one moment. "You think I need your job?" she said, voice shaking. "You'll see me again, not as your staff, but as your owner." Security escorted her out under the mocking laughter of Kelechi, who filmed the scene for Instagram stories. From accountant to thief. "Lagos never disappoints," she sneered. Outside, Amara walked into the scorching sun. The whole city felt like it was watching, but her eyes no longer held tears, only resolve. She took the flash drive from around her neck, held it up to the light, and whispered, "This is my father's voice. You can't silence it." The small Yaba apartment became Amora's war room. Her walls were covered in printed statements, legal notes, and photographs. She reconnected with Grace E. Canham, an investigative journalist known for exposing corruption in high circles. Grace, tall and fearless, listened to Amora's story in stunned silence. "You're sitting on a bombshell," she said. "But if you release it without structure, they'll crush you before it detonates." Together, they traced a money trail to offshore accounts and unearthed shell corporations registered under Kayoma's fake names. Grace promised to help publish the expose, but only when the legal proof was airtight. Meanwhile, Barrister Eves rejoined the fight, helping Amora prepare a court petition demanding ownership verification. "If the documents you hold are authentic," he said, "you can legally reclaim Oasis holdings." At night, Amora would sit on her balcony, Lagos lights flickering below. She thought of her father's dreams, of building homes for low-income families, of empowering local workers. They had stolen his dream and turned it into luxury estates for the elite. Now, she would take it back, piece by piece. The following week, she received a message. "Meet me at midnight. I have something you'll need." It was Tobechukwu. They met at a quiet cafe in Lekki Phase 1. Tobechukwu looked exhausted, eyes full of guilt. "Amora, I know you didn't steal anything. Kayoma planted those files," he said. Amora didn't flinch. "I know." He hesitated. "Then why didn't you fight it?" "Because I'm not here to win an argument," she replied. "I'm here to win back my father's legacy." Her words hit him like thunder. He stared at her, piecing it together. "Your father was Amara Nwosu." Amara nodded. "And Chief Obinna destroyed him." Tobechukwu ran his hand through his hair. "You don't know what you're up against. Obinna's power reaches everywhere. The courts, the media, the police." She leaned closer. "Then I'll use what he doesn't have. Truth." Tobechukwu looked torn. "I can help you. There's a vault in the main office, Chief's private archive. It holds the original company papers. If we can get them, your case becomes unshakable." Amora stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" He exhaled. "Because I've lived in that family's shadow all my life. I was adopted to make them look generous. But I've never belonged, and now I know why. I was meant to help you." The silence between them turned warm, electric. Two people bound by justice, drawn by fate. But even in that flicker of connection, danger loomed. Amara whispered, "If we do this, there's no turning back." He smiled faintly. "Then let's make it count." As they stepped out into the humid Lagos night, the wind carried a silent promise, the calm before the empire shook. The night Lagos went quiet, Amara and Tobichukwu made their move. It was 1 a.m. The Oasis Holdings Ikoyi headquarters loomed before them, its glass facade gleaming like a watchful eye under the moon. Tobichukwu swiped his keycard, and the elevator doors closed behind him with a soft metallic sigh. His pulse thudded in his ears. Amara, calm but alert, whispered, "Are you sure no one's here?" "Security rotates every hour," he said. "We have 20 minutes." They moved through the dimly lit corridors, their shadows stretching over portraits of Chief Obinna smiling beside presidents and foreign investors. At the end of the hallway stood a heavy steel door marked Private Archive. Tobichukwu entered a code. The lock clicked. Inside was a shrine to deceit, shelves of old files, leather-bound ledgers, dusty framed photos, and in the center, a small safe bolted to the floor. "This is it," he whispered. Amara knelt beside the safe. "Do you know the code?" "Not exactly," he said, "then punch in 6 digits. The first attempt failed. A second. Then, click, the safe door creaked open. Inside lay a certificate of incorporation, yellowed with age, bearing 2 names. Amara Nwosu, 51%. Chief Obinna Okonkwo, 49%. Amara's hand trembled as she touched her father's signature. For a moment, her composure cracked, and tears spilled down her cheeks. This is everything," she whispered. "They erased him, but he never truly vanished." Then Tobichukwu froze. "We're not alone." The sound of heels echoed in the hallway. Kayoma's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "So this is where the little accountant sneaks in to play detective." Amara spun around, clutching the file. Kayoma stepped in, flanked by 2 guards. "I knew you'd try something," she said smugly. "Tob, I warned you about this woman. But love makes fools of men, doesn't it?" Amara stood tall. "You stole my father's life, Kayoma, but tonight I'm taking it back." Kayoma smirked. "You think some old papers will save you? I own the board, the media, the law. You're nothing." But Tobichukwu stepped forward. "She's not nothing. She's the rightful owner." Kayoma's eyes blazed. "And you'll regret saying that." She turned to her guards. "Take the file. Make sure she disappears quietly." Amara and Tobichukwu bolted toward the back exit. A chase ensued, papers flying, alarms blaring. They barely escaped through the basement car park. Amara clutched the certificate to her chest as they sped away into the night. "Now," she whispered, "the truth is a heartbeat." By dawn, the Okonkwo mansion in Banana Island was in chaos. Kayoma's fury shook the marble walls. "She has a certificate. That stupid girl has it," she screamed. Meanwhile, Amara hid in Grace E. Kanum's apartment in Lekki, exhausted but resolute. Grace examined the document and smiled. "This is your smoking gun. But we need witnesses, bank records, and a legal timeline before we go public." Amara nodded. "Barrister Ease is working on it. He says we can file the ownership petition by next week." But there was one person missing, Tobichukwu. He hadn't answered her calls since the night of the escape. 3 days later, she received an unmarked envelope at her door. Inside was a photo of Tobichukwu tied to a chair, bruised. A note read, "Return what you stole, or watch him vanish like your father." Her heart nearly stopped. She called Grace. "They have him. They know." Grace's voice was firm. "Then they are desperate. That means you're winning." Amara bit her lip. "I can't let him die for me." Grace sighed. "If you go alone, you'll walk into their trap. Let me arrange protection." But Amara was already gone. That night, she met Kayoma in an empty parking lot behind the National Theater, the same place her father's car was found decades ago. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. Kyoma emerged from her SUV, all arrogance and cold perfume. "You're brave to show up," she said. Amara held her chin high. "Let him go." Kyoma smiled. "Give me the certificate first." Amara tossed a rolled-up document toward her. Kyoma picked it up, flipped through the pages, and frowned. "This is a copy," she hissed. Amara smirked. "The original is safe, and if I don't return home in 1 hour, my lawyer sends it to the press." Kyoma froze. "You become clever." "I learn from thieves," Amara said, turning away. "But I don't steal, I reclaim." That night, Tobichukwu was released, bruised but alive. He looked at her with guilt. "I told them nothing," he said, "but they'll come harder now." Amara touched his hand. "Then so will I." The next week, Lagos woke up to a storm, not of rain, but revelation. Oasis Holdings, built on fraud, screamed the headlines. Grace E. Kanam's expose went viral across Nigeria. The forged signatures, the offshore accounts, the Array's co-founder. Social media erupted. #Justice for Nwosu trended for days. Chief Obinna called an emergency board meeting. His voice thundered. "This girl is lying. She's manipulating old papers." But the board was restless. Investors were withdrawing. Banks froze the company's accounts. For the first time in decades, the Okonkwo name trembled. At home, Lady Nkechi wept. "Obinna, we can't survive this." The press, the humiliation. Kyoma's voice was cold. "We'll destroy her. One last time." But fate had already chosen sides. 3 days later, Chief Obinna suffered a mild heart attack. The empire began to crumble from within. Senior staff resigned. Whistleblowers came forward. And in Surulere, Amara stood before her father's framed photo. "You can rest now," she whispered. "Your truth finally breathes." The Federal High Court, Lagos, overflowed with reporters, lawyers, and curious citizens. Everyone wanted to witness the stormed climax. Amara sat beside Barrister Ease, her hands clasped tightly. Across the aisle sat the Okonkwo family, arrogant yet nervous, the empire on trial. The judge, stern and deliberate, called the session to order. "Miss Amara Nwosu, you are claiming legal ownership of Oasis Holdings." "Yes, my lord," she said calmly. Kyoma's lawyer rose. "Objection. The plaintiff is an impostor with forged documents." Barrister E. stood. "My lord, the documents are verified by the Corporate Affairs Commission. The signatures match both founders. Exhibit A, Certificate of Incorporation, dated 1990. Gasps filled the hall. Kyoma's lawyer faltered. "That could have been tampered with." Ease smiled. "Then let Exhibit B speak. The original bank statement showing Nnamdi Nwosu's majority investment, signed by the central bank." The judge leaned forward. "Defense, do you contest this evidence?" The Okonkwo lawyer hesitated. We need time to verify." Denied, the judge said sharply, "You had 3 decades." The tension was thick enough to choke on. Then came the final blow, Grace's testimony, detailing the offshore accounts and falsified documents. The judge banged his gavel. "The court hereby declares Miss Amara Nwosu the rightful majority shareholder and legal owner of Oasis Holdings. Case closed." The courtroom erupted, reporters shouting, cameras flashing, Amara standing frozen as justice finally arrived. Kyoma's face crumpled. Kelechi burst into tears. Chief Obinna sat silent, defeated. Amara whispered, "Papa, you won." The world flipped overnight. News channels replayed the verdict on loop. Amara, once marked as a local girl, now stood as Nigeria's youngest female business magnate. The same elites who sneered at her call to apologize. Magazines clamored for interviews. She refused them all. Her first public appearance came a week later, at a press conference. Wearing a simple white suit, she stepped to the podium. "My name is Amara Nwosu," she began, "the daughter of a man you erase. Oasis Holdings will no longer be a playground for the powerful. It will serve the people it once ignored." The room erupted in applause. Tobichukwu watched from the crowd, pride and guilt warring in his eyes. After the conference, he approached her. "Amara, I owe you an apology. She turned slowly. For doubting me. For betraying you, he said quietly. That night at the vault, I told Kayoma where we were. I was scared. Her breath caught. You? I couldn't stop them, but I couldn't let them hurt you either. I gave you the documents before they could destroy them. Silence. Then she whispered, You broke my trust, Tobe, but maybe you also saved my mission. He looked down. I don't expect forgiveness. She smiled faintly. Good, because forgiveness isn't given, it's owned. That night, she stood at her father's grave, clutching the court order. They mocked my beginnings, she whispered, but they'll remember my name. Lagos skyline shimmered behind her, not as an enemy anymore, but as an empire reborn. The glass doors of Oasis Holdings opened to a new dawn. The same corridors where Amara once walked as an underpaid accountant now echoed with her confident heels. A new brass nameplate gleamed outside the CEO's office. Amara Nwosu, chairwoman and chief executive officer. Her first meeting was tense. Department heads, many of whom had once mocked her, sat rigidly, waiting for her to speak. Amara stood at the head of the table, poised yet commanding. Good morning, she began. Some of you build careers on loyalty, others on lies. Starting today, Oasis Holdings will be rebuilt on truth. She paused, scanning faces. If you ever falsified a document, stole a kobo, or exploited a worker, resign now. Silence. Then 3 executives quietly stood and walked out. The rest remained, shaken. Good, she said. Now let's begin the audit. For weeks, Amara and her team dug through decades of corruption, fake invoices, shell companies, inflated contracts. She reinstated workers who had been unfairly dismissed, promoted staff from humble backgrounds, and created a new department for community housing, her father's original dream. She renamed the company headquarters Namdi Tower, unveiling a giant mural of her father's face in the lobby. Reporters swarmed the event. When asked why she honored a man most had forgotten, she said, Because Lagos remembers power, but forgets integrity. I'm here to balance that memory. Meanwhile, Kayoma and Kelechi lived in seclusion. Their social invitations vanished, luxury deals were cancelled, and the once proud Okonkwo name had become a symbol of greed. But Amara didn't celebrate their downfall. She knew revenge was temporary, restoration was eternal. Late one evening, Tobechukwu entered her office. You've turned this place into something your father would be proud of. She smiled softly. Not yet. I'll be proud when Oasis builds homes for those who sleep under bridges. He nodded. Then let's make that our next project. Months passed. Under Amara's leadership, Oasis Holdings became a national success story. The company's first major initiative, the Nwosu Empowerment Foundation, launched in partnership with Grace E. Kanam's media platform. Its goal, provide micro-grants and mentorship to underprivileged entrepreneurs across Nigeria. At the press conference, Grace said, Power is not about having wealth. It's about how many lives you lift. And today, Oasis is lifting thousands. Amara smiled from the stage, humbled yet radiant in a cream suit. The same reporters who once called her the disgraced accountant now hailed her as Nigeria's new visionary. But behind the applause came a message that pierced her heart. Chief Obinna Okonkwo requested a meeting. Barrister Ease advised against it. He nearly destroyed your life. But Amara replied, If my father were alive, he'd want peace, not pride. She visited the old Okonkwo mansion in Banana Island. Once a symbol of luxury, it now felt hollow. Chief Obinna sat in a wheelchair, weakened, his pride gone. When she entered, he struggled to speak. Amara, I see Namdi in your eyes. I wronged him. I wronged you. I was greedy, afraid of losing everything. Amara listened in silence, tears glistening. I came, she said softly, not to humiliate you, but to forgive you. My father believed that forgiveness is the final victory. The old man wept. Thank you, he whispered. As she turned to leave, Kayoma appeared at the door, humbled, her voice trembling. I don't deserve your mercy. Amara looked at her and said, Then own it. The foundation is hiring volunteers. Start there. That night, as she drove home through 3rd Mainland Bridge, the same bridge where her father died, she finally felt peace. The ghost of betrayal had been buried in grace. The following month, Oasis hosted its first Africa Business Renewal Summit in Accra, Ghana. Delegates from across the continent gathered to hear how Amara transformed scandal into legacy. On the final night, during a quiet dinner by the sea, Tobechukwu approached her on the terrace. He had changed, not the ambitious young executive she once knew, but a man who had faced his own shadows. "I've been waiting to tell you something," he said, eyes steady. "When I first saw you at that gala, I thought you were fragile, but you've shown me what strength really looks like." Amara smiled faintly. "Strength is not in how loud we shout, Tobe. It's in how long we endure." He took a deep breath. "I want to build a future with you, not just in business, but in life. I know I failed you once, but let me prove I can be part of something right this time." Her silence lingered in the breeze. Then she said softly, "I don't need saving anymore, but I do need partners who understand purpose." He stepped closer. "Then let me stand beside you, not as a CEO, but as a man who believes in your vision." She smiled, finally letting the walls fall. "Then maybe it's time we build together." The next morning, their photos standing side by side at the summit went viral. The caption read, "From betrayal to legacy, how two souls rebuilt trust and an empire." Under Amara's leadership, Oasis expanded beyond real estate into logistics, green energy, and tech-driven housing. She created the Nwosu Foundation for rural entrepreneurs, offering mentorship to widows, artisans, and youth in underdeveloped communities. In Surulere, the neighborhood that raised her, construction began on the Nwosu Innovation Hub, providing training in finance, coding, and business ethics. The streets where people once whispered about that poor accountant girl now echoed with pride. One afternoon, as she visited the site, a young woman approached her. "Ma," she said, eyes shining, "I was mocked for selling chin-chin, but your foundation gave me a loan. Now I export to the UK. You changed my life." Amara hugged her. "No, my dear, you changed yours. I just opened the door." Her story became an anthem. Schools invited her to speak. Women's groups called her the rebirth of grace. Even foreign investors flocked to Lagos to learn her leadership model, integrity as capital. And through it all, Tobechukwu remained by her side, not as a shadow, but as a partner in growth. Together, they balanced power with compassion, strategy with service. But Amara never forgot where she started, or the laughter that once echoed when she walked into that first gala. It was a full-circle moment. Oasis Holdings celebrated its 60th anniversary gala, the same event where Amara had once been mocked and humiliated 10 years earlier. This time, she walked into the Eco Convention Center not as a guest, but as a host. The chandeliers shimmered like 1,000 blessings. Cameras flashed. Influencers, CEOs, and foreign dignitaries filled the hall. The crowd fell silent as Amara approached the stage in an emerald gown that glowed under the lights. She stood before the microphone, smiling humbly. 10 years ago," she began, "I walked into this hall wearing a borrowed gown. People laughed at me. They said I didn't belong here. And maybe they were right. Back then." The audience leaned in. "But what they didn't know," she continued, "was that humility is not weakness. It is a seed of greatness. My father taught me that roots matter more than crowns. They mocked my beginnings, but those same beginnings became my strength." The hall erupted in applause. She raised her hand gently. "To every young woman who's ever been told she's too small, too poor, or too unworthy, remember this. You don't need their approval to rise. Build quietly. Let your results make the noise." Tobechukwu watched from the front row, eyes glistening. Grace filmed the moment, already knowing it would go viral. Amara concluded, "This isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of restoration. Because true power is not in owning empires, it's in empowering others." The audience rose to a standing ovation. By dawn, clips of her speech trended worldwide under the tag hash from Mockery to Majesty. Millions watched, cried, and shared. And as the sun rose over Lagos, the city whispered the name that had once been erased. Amara Nwosu, the girl they mocked who became their boss.